Thanks, McFarlane. My hair is not gray because I don't have too much left with all the work we're doing. Thank you very much for the invitation to the FIA, and thank you very much to the FIA for their participation in BUSA and supporting BUSA in the work we do. Let me just start by saying a little bit about BUSA. We're the largest business organization in the country in the sense that every sector, every major sector is represented at BUSA as our organization representing corporates like BLSA and others. And our traditional role has been policy influence and advocacy and try to create an environment in which business can do sustainable and profitable business. And in doing that, we obviously have to work with government. We do a lot of work with portfolio committees, with departments, with the presidency and others. And we are robust when we need to be, but we don't criticize for the sake of criticizing. People like myself, Busi Mavuso, CEO of BLSA, are very often out in the public space criticizing when we need to. But we criticize government if it makes sense for us to actually do so with the objective of achieving what we want to achieve. And I think BUSA has been fairly successful given the complex environment we work in trying to promote an environment for business. But in the last few years, we've had a sort of mandate creep, if you like, since COVID, where during COVID, we got a lot of calls from members, from corporates, from non-members, about how to manage their way through the various lockdowns and the regulations related to that. And we got calls from government to help manage the pandemic. And it's at that time that we established Business for South Africa, which is not a separate business organization. It's now essentially an implementation arm for BUSA. It's a structure of BUSA. But we established that as a platform to mobilize all of business, not just BUSA members, and to adopt a way of work that is more project-oriented, with project management skills and capabilities, and enabling us in helping to manage COVID to be more flexible in the way we take decisions and to have a project management approach. Now, FIA would know how business organizations usually work with mandates and accounting and reporting and so on, which is the right way to do things. But we found that during COVID, if we didn't move quickly, if we didn't move flexibly, if we didn't have the ability to take decisions on the hoof, if you like, in many instances, and if we didn't enable government to manage the pandemic and work with government to manage the pandemic, people would have died, more people would have died. It's as simple and brutal as that. And so we established B4SA, and at the height of COVID, we had about 450, 500 professionals in health, in communications, in project management, in behavioral science, legal people, working full-time pro bono for a year to help us manage the pandemic. We also put together an economic recovery plan. And during the vaccine rollout, we mobilized the private healthcare sector to actually roll out the vaccines. And then when 2021 happened and vaccines were rolled out and so on, we said, fine, we've done our job and we put B4SA on the shelf. But with a view to always using that platform where we have to work with government to try and promote the national interest and business's interest. And so what we're doing today, the three areas that we're concentrating on with government, again, we are doing it in a way that we mobilize all of business. We are working with government to enable them and capacitate them to do what they should be doing. And all that within the context of an understanding of what's in the interest of business and in the national interest. And so when we looked at this at Busa, we had a long debate. What do we do in the current conjuncture in South Africa, where you have an incapable state, you have no growth, you have minimal investment, we need much more investment than we have, you have significant social problems, and you have an environment where businesses are not able to grow, are not able to consolidate, and new businesses are not able to actually establish themselves to the extent they should be. And we looked at three scenarios. The one is to say, well, Mr. President, we're not going to do anything here. This is your problem. Our government needs to sort out these issues to improve the environment, to put into place the structural reforms that need to be put into place, and business is stepping back. The second option is to go to the president and say, what are your priorities, and can we help you work with you on these? And then we'd land up with a whole list of priorities and do nothing. The third option was to say that, do we go to the president and say, Mr. President, these are the three things that we believe are important to business and important to this country. And we went for the third option because we felt that the first option of business pulling back, the potential consequences of that are that we jump from the cliff. We're no longer at the precipice. And to pick up the consequences and what that would create at some point in time would be significantly difficult to do. And so we went for the third option, but we did that with the clear view that we've tried this before. We've tried to work with the government before. We've tried to get government to do what it should be doing, and we were disappointed. What's different this time is that we sat down with the president in April this year and said, are you prepared to work with us in partnership? If so, we put together a structure that government and business participates in. We agree on critical interventions in each of the areas of energy, logistics and transport, and crime and corruption. We have a time frame for this, and we agree on how we're going to achieve those objectives and what each of us are going to do. And we hold each other accountable. And you've got to buy into that. We also, unlike in the past, have mobilized a group of CEOs that are giving considerable time to this effort. So besides the 130, 140 odd CEOs that have signed the pledge supporting this, we have about 15 to 20 CEOs that are very active in this and have contributed significant amounts of money to this initiative. In each of the three areas, we have CEO champions. So in energy, it's Nolita Fakudi from Anglo and Fleetwood Krobler from Cecil. In logistics, it's Mkolisi Ngojo, the ex-CEO of Exaro. It's Mpumi Dikalala, the CEO of Kumba. In crime and corruption, it's Neil Froneman, the CEO of Sibanye, and Yanni Durand, the CEO of Gremgro. Now, these people are spending considerable amount of time giving guidance, championing these things. We put together executives for each of these areas that are working on this full time, and we've got task teams in which business and government sits. So people ask me whether I'm optimistic about this time around. And I tell people, we're going into this with our eyes open. There's no guarantees, but we're not going to spin wheels. If we don't get traction, we then have to take a few steps back and review business's role. I don't want to be in a situation where business that Busa represents ask me whether we're not being compromised and whether our reputation is not being harmed. And when people ask me whether I'm optimistic, I say I'm quietly cautious. But there is traction. When we met the president in April, he agreed. He said, work with my team in the presidency to agree a structure. We did that. In June or so, we jointly presented the structure. And the president said we should meet every 6 to 8 weeks to get a report and to make sure that we're on track. We met in June, we met on the 1st of August, we met last week Tuesday. At each of these meetings, it's the president, it's 9 to 10 ministers, it's the CEOs of some of the SOEs, it's the chairs of the board of the SOEs, the head of the National Prosecuting Authority and her deputy are there, generals and police are there from the security environment. And they're all beginning to participate actively. And the president certainly appears to be very committed to this. Now, people have asked me, why is this sudden change? And I said, well, I don't know. Maybe it's in the run-up to the elections. Maybe the ANC feels they can use this in the election campaign. I don't know. And quite honestly, that's not my problem. My issue here is, can we actually make progress on this? So that's just by way of background of why we've done it and how we are doing it. We absolutely clear that this initiative is not the panacea to the country's problems. This is a very focused initiative in these 3 areas with very focused interventions over a period of 12 to 18 months. We believe we need to work on this till the end of next year. And it's to essentially stop the slide that the country is in, so that we have the space to actually begin to turn this massive ship around and put us onto a sustainable growth path with investment coming in. We believe that if we are successful in what we do, we will get to a 3% growth rate and we'll create 300,000 jobs, which is treading water. It does nothing to unemployment. But it at least puts us onto a growth path and gives us that space to actually grow from there. We certainly don't want to take over government's role. This is, we're raising money in business to procure expertise, to donate to government, to enable government to start doing what they should be doing. Now we can ask the questions, they have a budget, we pay tax, they should have been doing this many years ago and so on. Yes to all of that. But we're at a particular point in our country, certainly as broader business, we believe, that if we don't make this sort of an intervention, we're just going to keep on sliding and we're not going to be able to recover. So what the 3 areas you know about, we've made very good progress in energy, but that started last year when before the president announced his energy plan. 2 weeks before that, Busa went public with our plan. And 80% or so of what we put out in public found its way into the president's plan. So we agree with the plan. And we've raised funds to put expertise into the National Energy Crisis Committee working very closely with the Minister of Electricity. We've now put people into 4 power stations. We're sitting with government on NECOM. We're working together on the grid. We're trying to fast-track the resource bill through Parliament, which will open up the space for the private sector. And we're making good progress on that. On logistics, we've set up a similar structure to NECOM. Government is working with us. We've been working very well with the new Transnet board. The Minister Gordon, has been meeting with us regularly. I think the recent movements in Transnet, I think, as a result of some of those interactions. We making some very focused interventions in, for instance, at the Lebombo border post, where we're working together to clear backlogs and to reduce congestion. We're working on some of the major arterials and corridors to actually fix things up there. We've got aerial security at some of the major corridors to try and deal with the crime and corruption issues. And we've had sight of the logistics roadmap, which the government has promised will be agreed at the end of October, and that opens up a whole lot of space for the private sector. On crime and corruption, it's been a bit slow because of the nature of this. But we're working very closely with the NPA. They're very excited if we can get capacity into the NPA without impinging on their independence. And the ID bill that's going through Parliament at the moment will enable us to do that. And we're looking at sorting out and the 10111 emergency number and making that more effective, and we're looking at a forensics capability for the country. Now, all of this is being done in partnership. We believe that by the end of next year, we'll have put in the necessary capacity in government, skilled people in government for them to then run with this on their own, as they must do. We don't want to be there ad infinitum. As I said, it's a targeted intervention, a limited intervention, and that's what we're trying to do. We will assess this on an ongoing basis. We will track this on an ongoing basis, and if we find that we're losing traction, if we're losing momentum for whatever reason, then we will take a step back. We will go back to the BUSA board and to BUSA members and say, we've tried, what do we do now? So I see I've got 5 minutes left. I'm going to stop now and just see. So it's been a very quick run through given the time constraints here. But let me stop now and see if there's any questions. If there aren't, I'll carry on till the end of my time. I believe the questions are going to come up on the screen if there are any. So I'm just going to watch that. So that's just a quick run through of what we're doing. We're spending a phenomenal amount of time on this. We believe we're making traction. We believe that certainly Eskom is working very closely with us. That's why we've got people into power stations. We're working with them on the grid. The distribution company, we're talking to the minister to get the board appointed. NERSA has passed all the licensing requirements for the company to be formed and to do what it needs to do. So all of those are movements forward. And we're going to keep government's feet to the fire to ensure that we keep traction. Now, there's a whole lot of other stuff to be done: education, health, and other matters. Those need to continue, and we need to continue to do the work to get the right outcome through the business organization that we are in. BUSA continues to engage government and put pressure on government on the broader structural reform issues, the education issues, the employment equity issues, the health issues. We're doing a lot of work on NHI and so on. But we don't want all of that to distract us from focusing on these three critical issues, because that's the other South African problem. You start with a focus thing, and then you start adding to that, and then you just distill the thing. We've resisted adding anything to this. But the other work continues and must continue. And the fact that we partnered in government doesn't mean that we don't hold their feet to the fire on a whole range of stuff, including this. Doesn't mean we don't criticize publicly when we need to. But we don't criticize for the sake of criticizing. I don't want to be out in the public space because I like my voice. I want to be out in the public space because what I say makes a difference in what we're trying to do with government. So that's where we are. Organizations like the FIA, which are members of BUSA, organizations like Business Leadership South Africa, which are members of BUSA, the Minerals Council, the Banking Association, ASISA, SAIA, all see value in BUSA because of the role BUSA plays in coordinating and pulling business together on some of the critical macroeconomic issues in this country, over and above the very detailed program-related work that we're doing in these three areas. And B4SA, as I said, is a platform through which we do this, where we can move with urgency, where we can have a project management approach. So from the money we've raised for this, from corporates, we have a project manager, we have communications people, we have legal people working with us, we have executives for each of these three streams so that they do the day-to-day work. And that's how we're driving this. And we report back to the BUSA board on an ongoing basis to ensure that we're keeping to the broad mandate. So let me stop there. I say I've just got under a minute left, and if there are any questions on the screen, I'll take them. Thank you very much.
There is a question, Ms. Coovadia, there. The question says, do you see willingness from government to really change and root out individuals who are blatantly criminal?
Yeah.
It's like a carte blanche question, this one.
It's like a carte blanche question. And I answer like I didn't say carte blanche, I don't know. Now, look, on the crime and corruption side, we certainly, and again, in the work we're doing on crime and corruption, we are not talking to government about their willingness or unwillingness to do so. But in the work we do through BUSA, over and above what these three areas, the work that BLSA does and others, we at government's throat all the time to get movement on the corruption issues. One of the reasons why we've identified the NPA as a critical body to support and to capacitate, in other words, even enabling them to use the services of private prosecutors, for instance, is to actually give them the capacity to prosecute people. I think that all of us as a country, and we also therefore brief and work with civil society, we need to keep the pressure on government to ensure that the Zondo report is implemented, to ensure that people identified are brought to book, and that's not just through this initiative, but more broadly. And we need to keep their feet to the fire on that. But certainly the work we want doing with the NPA will, we believe, enable the NPA to actually be more successful in prosecutions. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers.